Hi, welcome to the Yarn and Yarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Rainbow Ange. Here on the channel you'll find me chatting about my adventures in knitting and crocheting and spinning for the most part. Thank you so much for joining me this week, both to new viewers and returning viewers. I always appreciate spending time with you. I feel a little bit rusty. It's been a couple of weeks since I've sat down and recorded for any length of time, so you'll have to forgive me if I stumble over my words a few times. Thank you so much for the feedback on the last video. A lot of you left lovely comments to say that you'd enjoyed my little sort of day by day segments, so yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed that one. It was always my intention to throw in one of those videos every now and then, but I haven't got around to doing it since the new year, so I must remind myself to do that every once in a while. But today is a traditional format. I've got some knitting, spinning, crochet to show you and a little bit of shop talk at the end. For anyone who is perhaps joining me for the first time, I run a bricks and mortar yarn shop. We're based in Penarth, which is a little town in South Wales just outside of Cardiff, and my shop is called Yarn and Yarns, the same as the channel, and you'll be able to find us on Instagram and Facebook, and hopefully, if I've remembered this week, which I forgot last week, all of the links should be down below. Before I get going, I just wanted to talk about the cowl that I'm wearing. So last weekend we went away for the weekend with some lovely friends. So it's actually a friend that James has known since his university days, and for the last few years we've gone away with him, his wife and their two girls. And most years the girls do a little bit of crafting, and over the years I have taught them all a little bit of knitting and crocheting. So when we arrived on Friday, I was gifted with this gorgeous cowl, which was knit for me by my lovely friend, who is the wife of James's friend, and she's a fairly new knitter and not super confident, but she gifted me this lovely cowl, which I think she said was from some Sirdar yarn that she'd knit, and it's these beautiful fun colours. I'm not sure what the yarn is. I want to say Temptation, but I haven't yet had a chance to look it up. But it was so lovely to be gifted something that someone had made especially for me. I don't know if you find this, but I think often as makers, people know that you like handmade stuff, but you don't always get gifted something that was made by someone you know, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So yeah, I'm really chuffed to have this beautiful cowl to wear. It's a very special gift, as it was made by a very special friend. That being said, it's time to crack on with my usual content. I think I'm going to start with spinning this week. In my rotation of trying to work on my oldest whips versus working on whatever I fancy working on, this last week has been a week where I work on my oldest projects. So I have been back to spinning up the Llanwenog fibre, which I've spoken about quite a few times on my past videos. It's a beautiful fibre from a Welsh breed of sheep, and I purchased it at Wonderwall a couple of years ago. Wonderwall is fast coming up again this year. It's at the end of April, so I'd like to try and spin through as much of this fibre as I can, because I think I may need to buy some more for the project that I want to knit with it. So this week I managed to finish the first quarter of what I have left. Sorry, I'm not very elegantly showing you this on a rolled up toilet roll. Classy. So yeah, I've finished spinning the first lot of singles. I started raiding the second quarter of my fibre stash, and I've just realised I've left it over there. So let me just pop up and get that. I thought I'd grabbed the right spindle, but I've got two lots of natural fibres on the go at the moment, and I picked up the wrong spindle. So I'm spinning this up on my Spin City UK spindle, whom I have affectionately named Juliet. So as you can see, I have started the second lot of that fibre. So this lovely bump will just hang out until I have the second lot spun up, ready to ply. I'm just making a traditional 2-ply with that particular fibre. And as we've established over the last few videos, when I'm spinning with that natural fibre, I also crave a little bit of colour. So alongside that, I have been spinning up some, I think, New Zealand merino. A year ago, we were travelling in New Zealand. James's sister lives in New Zealand, and we went on a trip there to attend her wedding. And I purchased a spindle from a lovely New Zealand maker. She gifted me a couple of bumps of fibre to try out the spindle, get going. In the end, another friend gifted me some beautiful Ashford fibre, but in the end I didn't end up spinning up the 2 bumps of fibre that I had been gifted by Tej, the spindle maker. So as my Facebook memories have been telling me it was a year since we had done our travelling, I thought it was high time that I got round to spinning up those bumps. So here they are. One, as you can see, is this lovely sort of burgundy maroon colour, and then I've got this blue as well. I'm assuming they're New Zealand merino, but I don't really know for sure. But they both spun up really nicely, and I'm actually going to ply these together because I think this is going to make a really fun mild yarn. Those 2 colours I think will look really fun together. I finished this blue this morning. It's looking quite purple on the screen, but it's definitely more blue, and I'm going to let that rest on the spindle for probably the next day, and then I will probably ply that up. So this week in my spinning plans there's going to be quite a lot of plying. I've got this to ply together. I've got some natural yarn that I got in a sample pack from the Spinner's Stash that needs plying, and I also still have one of my stone rolags that I span a few weeks ago that I want to try and Navajo ply, and I still haven't got round to that. So yeah, lots of plying in my spinning this coming week, I think. These ones I've just been spinning on Rosie, who is my basic drop spindle, and Rosie actually came away with me when we went away last weekend, and I didn't end up spinning any of the fibre that I took with me because we went on a little trip into a lovely small town called Nailsworth, which is just on the outskirts of the Cotswolds in Gloucestershire, and I came across a nice yarn store called Mother Goose, and she had a whole ton of fibre. She told me that she mostly specialises in needle felting, but I picked up a few bumps of fibre to try spinning with. There's some merino and what she thinks is some Rydale, I think she said, in a natural colour. I spun a tiny teeny little sample of that on this spindle while we were away, but nothing to write home about, and because I wanted to spin these New Zealand bumps, I took that, what I had done, off the spindle, and actually had a fun afternoon with one of the daughters of our friends who did a little bit of drop spindling for the first time. Yeah, so that is everything for spinning this week. On to crochet. So this week I have 1 finished object and 1 work in progress. So my first finished object is a bit of a monster. I've been working on this on and off in the shop for ages, and it is Lawrence, who is, whoops, my chameleon, and as you can see he is now done, and he is huge. He is about ½ a metre long. So I crocheted Lawrence from some Stylecraft Boutique Elements yarn, which is a wool acrylic blend, and this particular colour is the magnesium colourway, and I have made him contrasting knee caps, I think they call them in the pattern, in some Stylecraft Special DK in the orange colourway. We had a good chat in the shop because originally my thought was to do the kneecaps, and he also has a little hat which isn't quite finished. I'll pop, so there's his little hat, but it needs a tassel, and I forgot to bring the Stylecraft orange home with me. So did I say that was Starcraft in Spice? Special DK in Spice? My brain, I don't know what I'm saying today. Apologies if I'm just repeating myself. So yeah, I originally had in mind to make these little extras in green, but after canvassing the opinions of one of my groups in the shop, they told me I needed to go with orange. Who am I to argue? So Lawrence's hat has a little bit of sparkle detail around the edge. In the original pattern, it's a pattern by Val Pierce, which I found in an old issue of Let's Knit magazine, and she had some sort of sparkle yarn around the bottom. I didn't have any sparkle yarn to hand, but I did have some silver thread, so I held the silver thread double with the spice for the last row of his hat, and then I'm going to put some silver strands in the little tassel to go on his hat too. So I think I've spoken before about some of the issues that I had with this pattern. I went with the recommended weight of yarn and the needle and the hook size, which was a 4mm. However, if I'd have thought about it a bit more and used my common sense, I'd have gone down a hook size or 2, because some of the stitch work is quite open, and obviously for this type of creature, I hesitate to call him an amigurumi because I feel like amigurumis are usually reasonably small. But usually for this type of work, you go down a hook size or 2 to make a nice dense fabric so your stuffing doesn't show through. But luckily in this colourway, although you can see through the stitches, I don't think seeing a flash of stuffing here and there is too detrimental to the finished project. The other issue I had with the pattern is it said this was an easy crochet critter. And I think for anyone who was trying to tackle crochet for the first time, like easy kind of infers beginner, doesn't it? But there's quite a few techniques in these, and then at the end you have to go back in and you're meant to pinch this fabric together and sew these lines on top. I just crocheted over the top. I think the ridge on the back probably could have been a bit more prominent, but I don't mind. It's just a project for fun for me. But yeah, I think there was a few difficult techniques, and the pattern didn't really give you much help in terms of where to place these. It just says, you know, start from the nose and go over to the eye, and then the same for the legs. It just said sew the legs on. I think for a beginner, I wouldn't recommend this pattern. I think that you need to probably have 1 or 2 of these types of projects under your belt before you tackled something like this. There was also some crab stitch detail on the eyelid, which is obviously a slightly more advanced technique in crochet, I think, anyway. But yeah, he is done, and he is going to hang out in the shop for a little while. Next week in the shop I'm hoping to change the window, and a few of my customers have been knitting and crocheting dinosaurs, so we're going to have a little dinosaur display. And although Lawrence is a chameleon, I think he may well be okay in our little dinosaur / lizard theme window. I'm going to broaden the scope of that just so I can put Lawrence in. Hey, I own the shop, I can do whatever I like. For my crochet work in progress, as I said, last weekend we went away with friends, and I was trying to come up with some projects that I could take that would be very easy to do while I was sat chatting and catching up and eating lovely food and doing all of the things that we do on a weekend away. So I hauled out of hibernation my granny stripe blanket. This hasn't seen the light of day for ages, but I've got the bug again. So I popped a whole bunch of leftover scraps of yarn into the bag. I'm keeping this now in my oyster catchers bag because it had outgrown its last bag. So yeah, I threw in the blanket and I made a reasonable amount of progress. So here is the blanket as it is looking now. So this is the start point, and this is where I am crocheting. Somewhere on here, if I can find it, I popped in a progress keeper before, oh there we go, before we went away So here is my little progress keeper. I think I needed to pop on something that shows up a little bit more. This one's quite a small keeper, and yeah, it's quite small and delicate, so sometimes it's hard to spot it. But as you can see, I've worked from here all the way up to here over the last week, which, considering the length of this blanket, is quite a lot of crochet. So if I start over here and work my way along, as you can see, it's quite a substantial blanket. I think this will fit on at least a double bed. So yeah, the rows are quite long. But I've rediscovered my love for this project. As I say, I haven't touched it for ages, but the sort of repetitive treble cluster process of doing this blanket I just found really nice and relaxing, and as I say, it was nice to be able to sit and do that while chatting with people. I think I may have picked up the wrong hook size when I restarted on this again, because here down my edge, you can't really see it that way so much, but from about here the crochet is going outwards slightly, and my number of stitches definitely hasn't changed. But when I picked up this project, there was no hook in the bag that it was living in, and I looked on my Ravelry page, and of course I hadn't made a note of the hook size, so I shoved it in a 3.5mm hook, but my sort of clusters are definitely a little bit looser. That these ones up here are a little bit bigger, so looser tension wise than the ones down here. So I'm not sure whether that is because I used a smaller hook size down here, or whether I have just relaxed and my tension is loosening up. I'm not really going to worry about it, although it's making my edges of the blanket slightly wonky. The blanket is just for me, just for fun, so I'm not going to be too particular about that, and it's not made a massive difference. So yeah, this week I has worked through all of the minis that I popped in my bag to use over the weekend. So I spent an hour or so one evening, when I didn't really feel like doing much else, caking up a whole bunch of minis and leftovers into another big magic ball. I think there is about 70 or so grams in this ball, maybe slightly more, so that should keep me going for a little while. Not sure how long I will keep working on it. At the moment it has kind of captured my imagination again, but as we get into the warmer weather, I'm probably not going to want a blanket over my lap to work on. So this is getting to the sort of size where it starts to keep you warm as you're working on it, which at the moment is quite nice because it's still fairly chilly, but hopefully in the coming weeks the weather will start to get a little bit warmer. So yeah, I'm not sure how many more weeks this will get worked on before it gets put into hibernation again. But yeah, I just really love all of the fun and colours. I've not done any sort of planning. I've just literally stuck in whatever came out of the bag next, and the same with this magic knot ball. I didn't pay any attention to what colours were going next to each other. I just pulled out a whole bunch of minis from my leftover box and knotted them together. So yeah, really enjoying that project. And although it is a work on whatever I want week, I think what I want to work on is my oldest project, so I think that will get some more love this week. Is everything for crochet, so what we are left with is knitting. I have got 2 finished objects to show you, and I think 3 works in progress. So my first finished object is something I'm pretty sure that I haven't shown on any of my videos before. A month ago, must have been a month ago now, we had our little group that meets in the shop on a Saturday afternoon, and they tend to experiment with different techniques, and one of the members of that group is a fantastic knot worker and bead worker, and she designed a little fun session where we could knit with beads. So I started a little sort of bracelet or a cuff with some beads and some knitting, and yesterday I got round to finishing it. So here is my finished beaded bracelet. On the back side it's got this magnetic clasp, and it's quite a nice clasp. If I can take this off and show you, so it pulls apart but sort of slots into, don't know if I showed you that very well because I was watching what I was doing rather than the camera. So rather than sort of pull apart that way, which could easily get pulled off of your wrist, it actually slots together, and there's some magnet, there's like magnetisation in the middle, so once that's clipped together it's also sort of sticking together, if that makes any sense. I don't think it does, but hopefully you get the drift. But it was a nice easy little project. So what we did was hold 2 yarns together, and I held together some really fine crochet cotton. I didn't bring the yarns home, I should have. Let me try and show. So where you see the brighter orange sort of flecks, that was the crochet cotton, and we pre-threaded all of our beads onto that finer yarn, and then as we knit we held it double with whatever we wanted, and I picked out a ball of Debbie Bliss, what was it called, Fine Donegal I think it was. It's like a 4-ply tweed that I had sort of left over hanging around in the shop. So those are the colours that I use with mine, and then I chose this sort of brassy colour clasp to fit that together. And it was just garter stitch, and every other row we were adding these beads on. So yeah, I'm really pleased with that fun little project, and I think I didn't particularly enjoy threading the beads. That was probably the most boring bit, but I did enjoy the knitting, and the knitting didn't really take long at all. I think all told I probably spent 3 hours on this project, including the threading of the beads. So yeah, I could definitely see myself at some point in the future making some more of these in different colours. Second finished object are a pair of socks, and I think I showed these in last week's video because I had just cast on the first cuff, and yeah, I sped through these this week. I really love the colours, and I did a fair bit of the knitting. I think I'd almost finished the first sock by the end of our weekend away, and yeah, I was just inspired to carry on with the second sock. So here they are. These are my West Yorkshire Spinners socks. The contrast heels, toes and cuffs. Had to think about where I was pointing there. That is, I think, in the blue raspberry colour, or is it bubblegum? Not sure. I'll pop it on the bottom of the screen here. And then the main colour is one of the birds colourways, and this one is called Kingfisher. So yeah, I have a lovely new pair of socks, and these are my January socks. So at the beginning of the year I bagged up 12 balls of my commercial sock yarn with the idea of pulling out a ball every month to knit a pair of socks to help me get through some of my commercial sock yarn stash. But I cast my January socks on the 1st of March, so I'm a little bit behind. I have pulled my February and March yarns, so I know what's coming up. I just need to get knitting. My February yarn is actually a yarn that I had earmarked for a pair of socks for my mother-in-law, and she has quite small feet compared to me, so those next pair should knit up relatively quickly when I get them on the needles. So yeah, that's finished object number 2. My standard sock recipe, so I cast on 64 stitches on a 2.25mm needle, and I usually do between 12 and 15 rounds of ribbing. This time I went with a 2x2, and then I tend to knit between 50 and 60 rows for the leg. I like a relatively short leg, so I did 50 rows. I popped in some waste yarn for an afterthought heel, knit down my foot. I knit 67 rows for my foot, and then do a standard wedge toe, and then I went back in and put in just a standard afterthought, or forethought I should say, really, heel. So yeah, they are really fun addition to my sock collection. I'm toying with the idea. At the moment in the shop I have got a sock on display that is in the West Yorkshire Spinners Goldfinch colourway, so I'm toying with the idea of maybe swapping that out and putting one of these Kingfisher socks on the wall for a little while before I wear them, but it is, yeah, tough decision because I really want to wear these socks too. So we'll see. I have plenty more socks in my sock drawer, so I'm sure for the sake of having something new on display in the shop for a few weeks, I can probably forego wearing these ones. Now, as we know, the laws of sock knitting say when you cast off one pair of socks, you should cast on another. And of course, a sensible thing would have been for me to cast on those February socks that I just mentioned. However, who's into being sensible? Not me. I came back from my weekend away to an amazing package from my dear friend Caroline, who is the genius dyer behind Colourful Creativity. She also has the Colourful Creativity podcast here on YouTube, so I would highly recommend checking out Caroline's lovely yarns and items that she has for sale in her shop, and also watching her lovely videos. And she had sent me a gift of some amazing fibre and yarn, and I'll probably show you that. Actually, I don't usually have an acquisitions section, but I think I will show that off before I disappear today. It started raining here. I'm not sure if you can hear that. It's raining quite hard. Oh, actually, I think it's hailing. Yeah, there's some hailstones out there, so if you can hear that ping ping sound in the background, it's just weather. Anyway, back to my package. So Caroline included some fibre for me to spin, a lovely bag, as I say, I'll show you that in a bit, but also in the package was this lovely skein of yarn. It was already all wound up for me, which was fantastic, and this I believe is her pumpkin spice colourway. And I actually have, I'm looking over there because I think I actually have a skein of this in my stash, because I purchased some from her at the Knit Tea Retreat last October, along with a really fun zingy purple colour, but I had those earmarked for a lovely colourful brioche shawl when I get around to casting that on. So I was super excited to be gifted another skein of this, and I think she said this was one of the early iterations of pumpkin spice, so my version may be slightly different to this, but I wanted to cast on with it straight away because hello, orange. So I started, as soon as my needles became free, I cast on a new sock, and this is my progress so far. So I've decided to do a blueberry waffle sock. I haven't knit a blueberry waffle sock for a good few years. I think I have one other pair in my sock collection, and I don't know why, I just had an urge to use, I wanted something with a bit of texture, and I just had to cast on, so I did. So yeah, this is my progress so far. So that's one side of the sock, this is the other. There's some fabulous fun sort of pooling effect, and it's kind of travelling around the sock. So as you can see, that sort of speckle section is coming right round, which I love. It started off down here on my cast on, round and back. So yeah, I'm really enjoying knitting on this sock. There are two things I love about this yarn. The first, of course, is the fabulous orange. I love it. There's some really lovely specks of a deep bright orange. I don't think you can kind of see it just there. My camera's phone is not the best, but I'd love a sweater in that sort of colour. And the other thing that I adore about this yarn is every now and then you get a speck of this really fun neon limey green, which every time I get to knit a stitch in that colour, it just makes me smile. Those stitches have like a really fun, there's another one there, look, really fun little personality. I love it. So I'm knitting these on my 2.25 Knit Pro Zings, and again I've cast on 64 stitches, and I am just knitting on my first sock. This lovely progress keeper I've recently rediscovered. I was tidying up in that messy office that I showed in the video last week at the shop, and I came across a notions pouch which I thought I had lost, but it just got buried on that desk, and it had a little tin of some lovely stitch markers and progress keepers, and I believe, if I remember rightly, this was a beautiful gift from my lovely friend Courtney, who is Unravel an Elephant on Instagram. The other fun thing about this project is I usually work my cakes from the outside, but I just grabbed an end and cast on, and it turned out to be the end that's coming from the middle, so that's kind of amusing me and keeping me happy as well. Don't ask me why, it just is. Eek, those hailstones are getting really big now. The sun is also still shining, so I don't know what's going on out there. Crazy Welsh weather. I'm keeping that in a fun project bag that I made ages ago. It's not the best quality, there are a few mistakes. This is one of the first project bags that I ever made. But as you can see, I thought this one was perfect for matching with that beautiful orange yarn.